You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Where do science and intuition meet when it comes to healing? Find out more in today's transformative episode. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. This episode explores what healing can look like when clinical training meets intuitive insight. With a background in conventional healthcare and a deep connection to energy-based approaches, our guest shares how blending the two has shaped her work and her own path. It's a conversation about paying attention to more than just symptoms and listening for what the body might be trying to say beneath the surface. Dr. Dolores Fazzino, a trailblazing thought leader, visionary, and innovator, is revolutionizing the realm of energy healing. As a renowned nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, she fearlessly combines the power of intuition and trust to facilitate profound transformations. Driven by a deep belief in the body's innate wisdom, she guides individuals on a transformative journey, empowering them to tap into their own healing potential. Prepare to be captivated by Dr. Fazzino's unique blend of intuition, energy healing expertise, and unwavering trust in the body's innate ability to heal itself. Let's meet Dr. Dolores Fazzino. Hi, Dolores. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because we will be talking about holistic and energy healing. I have to say, one of my favorite topics, and it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Petra. I appreciate that. And yes, I think we're in interesting times right now, and timing is everything. So I'm excited to share with your audience.
Yes, absolutely. Very interesting times. So I think this episode comes at just the perfect timing. So yeah, let's start off with a little bit about yourself, Dolores. Maybe you can share a part or parts of your journey that connect to what you do today, and maybe let our listeners in on what it is that you do today as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think each one of us has a journey. We're on our journey, and certain things happen on that journey that are pivotal moments that kind of realign you to where you need to be. And just, case in turn here is that I was born an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person. I'm a product of the 1960s and 70s, okay? So I've been around the block a few times, but you have to remember being empathetic and highly sensitive person during that time, people didn't know what the heck that was, and they thought that you were like the odd person out. For me, I could feel things very deeply, and I was very sensitive. And I grew up in a household where we weren't allowed to feel. My mom's MO for that was ignore it, it'll go away. And when you say that to an empath, intuitive, highly sensitive person, and they try to do it, guess what? It doesn't go away. It grows bigger. So I used to tell her it's not going away, it's getting bigger. For me to survive my childhood, I needed to channel that energy into either some creative outlet. So I chose music, and I really excelled at it. In fact, I was on a pathway to become a concert clarinetist, and probably in my junior year of high school, I changed my pathway of study to go into healthcare. And that's an interesting story in itself because in tandem with growing up and not being able to feel, my dad had back surgery in the 1960s and picked up a hospital-acquired infection, which at that time, it predates any of the modern technology or medicines that they had on board. It was like a death sentence pretty much. My dad survived that, but he was in the hospital for over 2 months and he looked like a walking corpse. And my mom's telling me, ignore it, it'll go away. And I'm looking at it, it's like, you understand. So what kind of happened between 1966 and 1975 is really a pivotal point because my dad, it was like whenever his immune system got compromised, this whole sequela of being sick, having to go to the hospital, having to have major surgery, and be in hospital for over 2 months happened not only the original time, but 4 other times during my childhood. I didn't really know if my dad was going to come back from the hospital ever, if he went. Remember, we couldn't talk about it. My childhood was like this emotional roller coaster. I channeled my energy into music and I really excelled at it. Now, it wasn't until 1975, the last episode my dad had of this, where the first piece of modern day equipment was introduced, and that was the CAT scanner. What they did, they were able to put my dad underneath the CAT scanner and they were able to determine that where his condition was stemming from was where he had his back surgery back in 1966. Their solution for this was that he was going to have a major back surgery called a spinal fusion. And remember, this is 1975. Spinal fusions were just starting to come onto the forefront of helping people with back issues. It came with a high risk of being paralyzed, you're going to die. Maybe you'll get better or maybe not. My mom, I think, was at the end of her tether with this whole thing. She was at her wit's end and she was grasping for other answers. Remember, this is 1975. We don't have technology like we had today that didn't come to the 90s. We didn't have Google MD. We didn't have anything. We had a lot of newspapers and magazines. So she came across an article in the National Enquirer, which was one of the gossip rags of the day, of this man who was a minister from Cairo, Michigan. His name was Reverend Alex Holmes, and he was being written up as a feature article because he had the capability of laying on of hands, and he actually assisted his brother of healing from leukemia. And Reverend Holmes had been doing this for the last 25 years. So he had been doing it since the 1950s. But you also have to remember this was considered in 1975 wacko quacko. You have all those things kind of going on. And my mom was all over having Reverend Holmes come to our home to work on my dad. My dad, not so much. And she said, only if the surgeon says it's okay. So by the grace of God, what I'm going to tell you next will show you how things set up behind the scenes in ways you have no idea. So my parents were in the hospital at that time, and my mom shared that information with my dad, and my dad responded. So my mom went out to the nurse's station, and it just so happened that the surgeon was sitting there charting. And she announced to the surgeon, I'm thinking about having a spiritual healer come in to assist my husband with his condition. Would that be okay? Surgeon doesn't miss a beat, writing, looks up at her and says, yeah, that's fine. So she went back to my dad's room and shared that information with my dad. And my dad said, okay, well, let's do it. So my mom returned back out to the same nurse's station, not 10 minutes later, and had another conversation with the same surgeon saying, my husband agreed to have the spiritual healer come in to assist him with his condition. The surgeon stopped what he was doing and looked up at her and said, what are you talking about? I never agreed to that. So my mom didn't share that piece of information with my father. And a month later, Reverend Holmes came to our home in Connecticut. My mom flew him out from Michigan. And I remember meeting this man. My brother and two sisters and my two grandmothers were there with us. And he was just this very humble, very quiet, very present energy. And he noticed my dad had one leg shorter than the other. I'm not sure how he knew this. We all knew this. My dad used to wear a lift in his shoe, but my dad was barefoot and his shoes were nowhere in sight. He asked my father to put both his feet up, and when my dad did, you could see that there was a 1-inch gap between the shorter and the longer leg. So he instructed my father to put his feet down. And he said some prayers over my father. He touched his belly, his solar plexus, and the top of his head, his crown chakra. And said some prayers, and about 3 minutes later, he said, put both your feet up, and they were both the same length. My life changed forever in that moment because I witnessed a miracle. My father, who was the biggest skeptic and needed evidence and physical proof that something was happening, was wailing and sobbing like a baby like I've never, ever witnessed in my life. He needed to have some type of evidence that this is possible, and that was it. Reverend Holmes did more work on my father for about a half an hour, and he was instructed to go rest for the next how long it took. My dad slept for over 24 hours because you and I both know this. When we do energy healing on anybody, it's like we're a computer that gets a huge download of information. And just like any computer that gets a new program, you have to restart the computer and reboot it. By resting and sleeping, you're rebooting your human computer to equilibrate to the higher frequencies. So my father slept for over 24 hours. A month later, he returned back to the CAT scanner, and there was no evidence of the infection. He never had to have that surgery. He never had to revisit that problem in his lifetime, and he passed away about 12 years ago at the age of 80. I knew in that moment that this happened, that it was my mission in this lifetime to bridge the physical with the spiritual and the visible with the invisible. Now, remember, 1975, it's just like you have Western medicine that is just dug in. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, how is this going to happen? You know what? It's like everywhere you go, here you are, because I can't stop who I am, because you could try to control it or whatever, but you can't. It's like your essence goes with you everywhere. Throughout my career, and I've been in healthcare for well over 50 years now, it was really interesting when I first started because I'm highly intuitive. I would know things before they'd happen. And people would say, how did you know that? I was like, I don't know. I just know stuff. And I would just walk away. But the thing was, your presence and your essence is everything. Sometimes no words are necessary. It's who you are, your presence, your essence, that is the message, basically. And just cleaning up your own personal space so that essence is as pure as it can be. Because let's face it, we are all born into situations, and some of us have had really challenging lifetimes. That's all part of the bigger picture. And this was to allow us to grow at a very deep soul's level. Okay, we have sovereignty, so we can choose what happens to us and how we show up. We have to remember it's not the outside doing it to us. We are the inside product. So if there's something that triggers us on the outside, there's a deeper part of that within you. And let's face it, today, everybody's getting uber triggered. I get excited about this in a good way because when you look at it from that perspective, you're able to start healing yourself at a very deep level. Because newsflash, it all starts with us first. It doesn't happen from the outside going in. The outside triggers, but it's never what you think it is on the outside. It's the same energetic resonance of something that probably happened in another place and time, that part of your soul fractured off and is landlocked in that other place and time that's unconsciously running the show for you. People ask, well, how do you get? It's like you could go to talk therapy ad nauseum, but I don't think that really does anything. When you sit with what's going on, okay, when you're a sovereign being, let's circle back to that. You have choice, you have power. This is where you step in your power. Yes, a choice is to react to that. A choice is to witness and observe. I'm being triggered. Why is that so? And just sit with what is coming up through your physical body, okay? Emotions trapped in the body have somatic responses. Say whatever's happening out here, like your neighbor just hit your mailbox and that really pissed you off, okay? Just for something out there. And you're like, oh my God, I want to really just sit with what it's triggering within you and feel that, because there's always a somatic response, meaning that there's going to be a feeling in your body when you're able to, and that's the gateway to how to heal that. It's just feeling that somatic response, okay? You're like, oh my God, I feel like I've gut punched. Okay, feel that. What does it feel like? Is it constricted? Is it expansive? Does it have a color to it? And just flood that area with so much love and compassion and self acceptance, because this is part of you that has fractured off in another place and time. You might get an insight of what it is, and that's fine. You don't have to relive it. It's about just loving that piece of you up and welcoming it home. Our natural tendency is that when something's painful, I reach for a pill to take, or I push it aside and ignore it. And that's not what wants to happen. It wants to come home to you to become complete and whole. When you're able to love and appreciate those aspects and those feelings that you're having and flood that with so much love and unconditional acceptance and self-compassion, it's like you're reemerging those parts of you to become complete and whole. And once that happens, that trigger no longer is affecting you, that external thing. I feel that is the key right now that's going to help many people, because let's face it, people are being triggered left and right. And Petra, you and I discussed this. I live in America, so there's a lot in America right now that are really pushing people's buttons. And it's interesting times because many of us Americans are not that way at all. I'm finding that even when I travel now, I'm meeting very beautiful souls that get it. Okay. Sometimes all you need to do is just sit in your lounge chair, eat your popcorn, and watch the show. Right?
Oh, beautifully put. Yeah.
I know I really dug in and really did a lot of turns and it convolutes and stuff. I hope that made sense to you and the audience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story, because I feel like that really opens up why you are so connected to that, why you are so interested in that and so passionate about it. And of course, a lot of it probably, like you said, you were born with, but that seemed to be that incident that really sparked that connection to energy and energy healing.
Without a doubt. And I just have to laugh when sometimes you don't realize what's really happening behind the scenes until much later. And it was when my father passed away that I realized his father, my grandfather, who I really felt a very strong connection with as a youngster. He passed away when I was 4, but he was probably one of the few people early in my life that saw me and knew who I was. Do you understand what I'm saying? And for a very long time, it was like just being heard and seen and valued for who you were. So I know my grandfather had a hand in that whole thing behind the scenes. I just knew it in without a doubt. Because I mean, this is interesting. We were working in multiple dimensions way back then when it wasn't even thought about. But if it wasn't black and white and the white picket fence, people were like, oh my God, these people are crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
you kind of have to laugh at that now, but that's just the day. And thank God we've evolved and changed. And talking about the witnessing the whole, I'm going to say, evolution in healthcare with that too. I believe in the 1990s when it's not the National Institutes of Health, but there was a national complementary and a medical board that was formulated. And it was with the help of Dr. I believe Bernie Siegel was instrumental in that. And Dr. Bernie Siegel, he was a surgeon at Yale New Haven Hospital that I had the opportunity to work with when I was early in my training in the 1980s. And I was mesmerized by him because he was really doing the stuff that I knew. I resonated with everything that he was doing because I knew this was true beyond a doubt. It was like people like him and Wayne Dyer and many other Western medicine trained but have bridged the complementary aspect like Deepak Chopra and Dr. Andrew Weil. These were all pioneers and they knew that there was more going on than just the whole physical thing where you give a pill, a procedure, and slap a Band-Aid on and you rip it off. And it was like the superficial healing, and it was never the deep-seated stuff that you needed to look at. Plus, the other thing, too, it was nice to witness that in Western medicine, things have a tendency to be compartmentalized in boxes. The physical system is one thing, but when you divvy up the physical system, it gets kind of interesting, too, because believe it or not, we are a complete whole. Everything kind of communicates and talks with each other. When you talk about the circulatory system and then the nervous system and the endocrine system, it's like you're dealing with these boxes and you think they're separate, but they're not. They all talk to each other. So that's how Western medicine is kind of formulated on. And I always used to think it was pretty crazy that we have the female reproductive system and then the male reproductive system, like the urology with the male stuff and the female, but the GYN, oncology, GYN and OB stuff is the female stuff. Yeah, there's a splash of endocrine in there, but you have to realize that your ovaries produce hormones. Okay, they produce estrogen and estradiol and testosterone and those follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, that's part of that. But guess what? There's all those other hormones that are involved with that. And if you just ignore the rest of them and just look at that, you're doing yourself a huge disservice because that whole system is a homeostasis and it's a balance. It's like checks and balances. Just for an example, women who are having hot flashes, they automatically go, you're going through menopause. No, check your thyroid out because guess what? If your thyroid is underactive, you're going to get hot flashes. But we kind of bypass that and not integrate it. So it's about integrating all the parts to become the whole. Now that's what the physical. Now we have to take it a step further because, and I think we talked about this a little bit, I love the analogy of giving an iceberg because everybody's got a good visual on that. The iceberg is an interesting concept because the iceberg, the tip of it, the physical aspect of who we are is what we can see. But underneath the surface, there's this big piece that a lot of people can't see or they ignore or they just don't think exists. But below the surface are your thoughts, your beliefs about yourself, your emotions, whether or not you've dealt with them, you stuffed them, you partially healed them, and your connectedness to yourself, your divinity, your ancestral lineage, and everything that has happened to you in this lifetime and previous lifetimes. Okay. That's all underneath the surface and that's unconscious and it's running, it's moving this physical thing. It's like maneuvering this physical thing. So what happens is that when we look at just the physical stuff and don't address the underlying issue, you're going to become the Titanic and you're going to sink. Okay, because you're going to hit the unconscious part of that iceberg because you can't see it, and you're going to put a hole in your existence, and it's going to, and I know that's a real dire, but I think it drives the point clearly. When you don't look at what's creating that problem, you could do, maybe by the grace of God, yeah, you'll heal it, but it'll only be temporary, okay? It'll reoccur because guess what? The underlying issue was never addressed. And case in point, with my background, I'm a nurse practitioner. I have a doctorate in nursing practice, and I actually still work in the clinical setting. In addition to doing the work that I currently do, I assist in surgery. I know that's a little on the, but it's just like I took to that 30 years ago as a duck to water. It was like, because I know I've done it before in another time and place. And for me, it's been a very wealthy, enriching opportunity because I get to witness people's endpoint creations of physical stuff, what they've created for themselves based on what's going on underneath the tip of the iceberg. And it's interesting because everything is energy, okay? Everything is energy. What you and I are witnessing, because we could see each other, we are physical demonstrations of energy, and that means that we have a denser vibratory capacity. Everything that's the table that I have here, the paintings you have on your wall, they're all energy, but they're denser forms of energy. Just like that tip of the iceberg, that's a denser form of energy. The things that you can't see underneath that iceberg are energy and frequency. They're like radio waves. And when we have those radio waves, they're still happening, even though we can't see them. And they're still running the show, even though we can't see them. Case in point, I think we all have had experiences where you haven't seen a person that you've known for a long time. Maybe they live thousands of miles away. You haven't talked to them in a while. You think about them, and the next thing you know, the phone rings and it's them. That's how energy works. It's the frequency. They picked up on your frequency. So that's what it is. Everything is energy. Once you understand and grasp that, your essence of who you are is creating your reality.
Yeah, I love that image of the iceberg. I think that makes it easy for people to sort of understand what we're talking about. And thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome, because sometimes it's hard to really grasp the concept of it, but I think it's the easiest way to really see it, because people know what icebergs are for the most part. And people kind of know about the Titanic.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
You don't want to be a Titanic, trust me. Circling back to how people create things, I knew that early on in my career as an assistant surgeon was that we would get a lot of people that would come in for, like, say they had breast cancer. They would have to have surgery to remove something. They'd go through chemo and radiation. And 18 months, 2 years later, they're back again for a recurrence. And I thought to myself, God, what is going on? Because it's just like people think, oh, blah, blah. I realized early on, it's like we need to dig deeper, because there's things that are going on within a person that are creating that. And, maybe it may be something like they're not loving themselves enough, or they don't know how to self-nurture, or maybe they're so busy in their life that they don't even make the list of to-do things in their life. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're raising a family, they have a household to run, they're maybe working and stuff, but they are not nurturing self. It's all an external thing. So there's a huge disconnect from doing and being, okay? And it's about marrying those two concepts together so they work more in alignment and more in flow, okay? And it's not one or the other. I think it's really essential that both are needed. It's just, I feel that our society has been programmed, and I also say duped into believing that you have to be in constant motion to be productive, to show your worth as a productive member of society. And I feel that many people have been in their heads, because when you're in doing mode, you're in your head. You're trying to figure things out. You're trying to make something happen. You're trying to push a boulder up a hill. Now, that sounds really exhausting, doesn't it? I mean, for me, I'm tired just thinking about it or just experiencing it. And I'm like, no, no, no. What we know is this: when you're constantly in motion like that and you are trying to figure it out, your body is under a lot of stress. When you're under a lot of stress, your immune system gets compromised. When your immune system gets compromised, guess what? You get sick. Okay. And it could be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but you're not well. And sometimes it takes a tragedy with your health, or being in a health crisis or some other crisis, for you to step back and realize, oh my God, this is not working for me anymore. The unfortunate part is that our society, especially here in the States, is kind of in that mode. Thank God we're past the COVID thing, but COVID and the pandemic had its gifts, okay? And I'm going to tell you why. People had been on a trajectory of this doing stuff for a very long time, okay? A lot of people realized that it was not sustainable. They just didn't know how to get off the doing mobile. It took something like the COVID, and remember, back 5 years ago, everything in the world came to a screeching halt for 2 weeks. We were no longer doing, we just had to be. For some people, this was tough, right? Because they didn't know anything different. And it was very uncomfortable because the brakes went on, and maybe there were some people that were in this motion because they were distracting themselves from themselves. So you had to kind of come to self and be with self. That's an uncomfortable place for some people, especially if they are disconnected from that aspect of themselves. COVID was a huge wake up call, and I believe a lot of people woke up because of that. And I feel that COVID had some other gifts that came with it as well. We witnessed the evolution of technology. The infrastructure had already been there, but it was never utilized to the capacity, which is a good thing. And because you and I are both communicating with each other, and you're in Europe and I'm in the United States, and we would have never met each other probably if it wasn't for this as well. So, like I said, there's been a lot of cool things that happened because of that. With that being said, it's like we had to learn more about being, okay? Because when you look at two columns as two poles, the doing thing and the being thing. Now, we talked a little bit about the doing aspect, and that's like being in your head. You could also interject that it's probably fear based, it's worry, it's a lot of anxiety because you're worrying about tomorrow, contemplating yesterday, and you are in your head and you're not in the present moment. Okay. Now, in contrast, when you look at being, when you're being, you are in your body, you're in your heart space, you are in the moment. When you're in the moment, this is when you're in your body. Now, did you know too that when you're in your body, this is where you could actually feel and experience your emotions? When you're in your head, not so much. You intellectualize your emotions. What happens, you ask people, how are they feeling? They say, well, I think I feel. Well, they're not even feeling, they're intellectualizing their emotions. Two different things, right? Because when you're in your body and you're in the present moment, you get to feel. That is our barometer. Guess what? You also are connected with your higher self. This is where you are able to connect with that inner wisdom that each of us carries and tap into that. When you are having a relationship with yourself, you are connecting with your intuitive ability. So you could say your chi body, your intuitive knowingness, divine spark, whatever, it's all the same thing. It's your intuition, whatever you want to call it. It's that little voice within yourself that you know that when you ignore it, you live to pay for it later. We've all been there. The goal is to learn how to trust that more than the external of what you're hearing. Okay. That's tough, especially in our society where there's a lot of noise going on, chit chat, distraction, distraction. Look at TikTok, TikTok's tick, 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 whatever. My point is that when you come to a point where you are being fully in your body, you're in the present moment. Nothing else matters. Right here, right now, and you're enjoying and fully present. This is where we start from instead of going over to doing. And I'm going to share a story that I think will really drive this home for people. For me, when I was in my 30s, I created a job, a career for myself, and I was in this doing mode, okay? And the good news was I had success, but it was short-lived because I ended up creating an autoimmune condition for myself because of that. So I knew moving forward, I would have to do things differently or create from a different way. When you start creating from just sitting in meditation or doing a mindful activity where you could quiet your body down and you're fully present with yourself, mindful activity can be anything from formal meditation, sitting in lotus position, to going out in a garden or going out in nature. We've all had those moments where we were involved with something that hours have gone by and we feel like it's 5 minutes. That is a mindful activity. And it's going to be different for every person. Okay. Some people need to have that adrenaline rush of doing some type of sport. For some people, it's doing jigsaw puzzles. For some people, it's doing something creative like writing or whatever. The key is to find out what your mindful activity is, because that is going to be the gateway that's going to get you into your body and be in the present moment. Just a little story. There was a one probably about 6 or 7 years ago. A lot of people know that I am not a morning person. And unfortunately, I have cats, and I had to take Max to the vet at dark 30 in the morning. It was like 6:30 in the morning. And you know what it's trying to round up, herd a cat? I mean, to put it in a carrier. I mean, it was just, you could probably understand and just see the visuals on all of this. Well, finally, I sequestered Max and got him in his carrier, and I'm on my way to the vet. Dropped him off at 7 o'clock, and on the way back, there's a sign that says yard sale. My higher self is saying, "You need to go there." I said, "No, I don't." They're like, "No, you need to go there." I said, "No, I don't. I want to go back to bed. I'm tired. I want to go back." "No, you need to go there." And I kept arguing with him. I said, "You know what? I should be having the yard sale. I have so much shit. I don't need any more stuff." I gave in and I went to the yard sale. Now, the house that was having the sale, I couldn't find parking right in front of the house. I had to go down 3 or 4 houses and park and walk. And I'm still having this conversation with my higher self. I go in there, walk around, come back out, and I said, "See, I didn't need anything in there." However, remember I said I parked 4 houses down? Walking back, the second house down, the car pulls out. And it was actually somebody that I knew from years ago. And she said, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm running into you, because I've been wanting to get in touch with you, because there is a professor at the California Institute of Health Sciences that wanted to meet you." And I said, "Oh, yeah, great." Give her my information. Out of that conversation, I met the professor. I taught a class there, and I asked the professor, I said, "So what do you do during the summer when you're on off?" She's over there. "Oh, I run the programs at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York." I said, "Oh, really?" She didn't know this, but that's been on my bucket list to speak there. Guess where I got to speak? So that's what I'm saying. It's just like you get these divine downloads, and when you get these downloads, you're in being. Then you go into divine doing, and then you come back. So look at an infinity sign, figure of 8 on its side. An infinity sign is constantly in motion, unless we botch it up and we're lopsided and we're in one pole and it stops. Okay. It's about ebbing and flowing between the poles of being and doing. Instead of starting with doing, I invite people to start with being. Get into your body, connect with yourself, have a conversation with your higher self, listen to the wisdom that's coming through. And this is where you get your next steps. And then you go into doing, I call it divine doing, and then come back and get the next piece. So you're constantly in motion as a figure of 8. Okay. And I believe that when you start doing that, I believe, and I know it's true, that your life is going to be more magical, because it's going to take less effort to create the things that you want. What a concept.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I don't know, there still is so much out there for us to discover about energy and healing, but this is a piece that if we make it part of our lives, if we awaken to that, as we've been talking about, it will make such a huge difference in not just our physical health, but also our whole well being as we were experiencing life. So, thank you for sharing that. Before we wrap up, I have a curiosity to ask you. I am wondering, when you work with people, when you work with your clients or your patients, how do you help them with the energy piece? Can you see the energy, or do you get the intuition that there's something they need to be working on? How does that work when you do a session with someone?
Petra, that's very interesting, because I read energy as if it's a language, because it's like frequency. And for me, when a client starts talking, it's like I get visuals of things and energetic things. And I like to teach people how to do this for themselves, because it's not about me coming in and doing the healing for it or facilitating it. I want them to learn how to do this for themselves because they're fairly capable of doing it. So they have tools in their arsenal or tool belt that they could rely on and tap into. It's about empowering people so they learn how to trust the wisdom that they're getting. Because what we have to remember is that that information is there for us, but we have to listen to it. We have to, first of all, hear it, be quiet enough to hear it, and then listen to it, and then implement it moving forward. And what I want to say too is that trusting your intuition is key right now. The more that you could become grounded and fully present in your body and trusting your intuition, this is how you're going to create certainty in an uncertain world. Okay? Because, case in point, you're going to be getting the information that is right for you, not your neighbor, not your spouse, not your kids, not society, but for you. Okay. Now, circling back to the whole pandemic thing, for me, I'm unvaccinated. And the reason why I am is that my intuition screamed at me, don't take the vaccine. Yes, being in the healthcare environment, I got a lot of pushback from that, but yet I survived and I made it through. And I remember some of my physician colleagues saying to me, well, Dolores, are you going to get the vaccine? I said, no. Well, don't you believe the science? And I said, let me tell you something. I've lived in this Taj Mahal for over 60 years. I know what it can and can't handle. When my intuition is screaming at me not to do something, that trumps any evidence-based medicine that you're going to put in my lap. It was a showstopper. They couldn't respond to that, but it was the truth. And now, flash forward 5 or 6 years later, we're finding out all the bad things about the vaccine. Okay. So the thing is that, maybe it is the right course for people to take it. Fine. Trust your intuition and make sure that's coming from your core and do what you're being led to do. It's not going to be popular sometimes, but it's not about being popular. It's about you doing what's right for you and empowering yourself to step into that.
Yeah, that sounds like a big piece to our healing journey is fostering that awareness and then trusting that intuition again. I feel like a lot of us have been disconnected from that or forgotten what that sounds like or feels like to actually trust that. So coming back to that is a huge step,
So
I
that's
feel.
what it's like to work with people. We empower them to step into their power and to learn how to trust that innate wisdom within them. Because
Yeah.
that's your sovereign right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I was just really curious about that. What would happen in a
No,
session?
it's a great question. It's a great question because everybody does things differently.
Yeah.
My patients are highly intuitive. I don't go by any protocol because you know what? Everybody's so uniquely different. You cannot change a fruit salad into one fruit. You just can't. And everybody has created whatever they're going through based on what's underneath the iceberg. Okay. Everybody's so uniquely different
Yeah.
and beautiful, as creations are incredible.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this amazing work that you do. And I feel like we've
Thank you.
created probably a lot of curiosity for our listeners at this point. So, Dolores, do you have programs or services available or ways that our listeners can connect with you or work with you? What do you have on offer?
Oh, yes, I do. And Petra, thank you for asking. I have a few things. If you go to my website, drdoloresfazzino.com, I have sessions. I also have a community called I'm Awake, Now What? And it's for those people who have awakened on their spiritual journey and you feel lost. Maybe you are not sure what to do. You're realizing that what the world was before was working for you, but it no longer is in alignment or resonance with you. This is a community that a partner of mine and I, her name is Cozy Stankaitis. She's a body talk practitioner. And we offer weekly live Zoom calls for support. And we talk about what's kind of up in the world and stuff like that and how people could move through that. It has a lot of resources, it has community, it has healing, and you could get more information about that. When you go to my website, Dr. Dolores Fazzino, there'll be a button that says, I'm awake now, what? Just press on that and you will be led through that page and more about what's going on. But just know that if you're all of a sudden waking up or things are not working or you feel like your world is crumbling, just know that things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you, number one. Number two, sometimes you're just getting upgraded, okay? Sometimes the old stuff that was a lower vibration was created when you were a different frequency is no longer in alignment with who you are. Yet you've evolved and grown and your energy and frequency is higher. So you're going to be matching with something that's in more alignment and resonance. Yes, it can be a very scary place. And you know what? What you do is you just take a deep breath and take baby steps and start moving in the direction. Okay. You're not alone. You're more supported than you know. And just come and play with us. It's like, I think you'll really feel a lot better in knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah. Community is such a huge thing. So that sounds like a wonderful,
Gotcha.
supportive place for people to
It
join
is.
and tune into. And Dolores also has her own podcast called The Dr. Dolores Show. So you can listen in. I think it's a live show, right? So people can listen into
It is
that
alive
live.
and recorded
Okay.
every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. And we talk about all different topics. And my whole premise of having this show is to educate and teach people that they can heal themselves, but also that they could step into their power and the things that they could do for that as well. And every so often we have guests on too, which is kind of exciting. And it's on Inspired Choices Network, and we broadcast internationally to like over 300 different platforms. So I'm sure any platform that you are tuned in to be part of that as well.
Wonderful. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Dolores's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her, where you can find her show, and how you can join the community that she spoke about. If you are feeling like this is something you want to check out, but maybe you are unsure or you're just starting to dip your toes in, or you are feeling some of that anxiety or uncertainty that's happening in the world, I think a community would be a lovely place to connect and get started in. Dolores, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I feel like I have learned so much in this time that we've spent together. And thank you for sharing your journey and your wisdom with our listeners. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Petra. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And take really good care of yourself, Dolores, and all the best. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.